Hello, I'm going to give a quick rundown of how I created this support for the Yoder 640S competition cart. It goes right under the Yoder on both sides, the short sides, and it lifts the unit completely off the floor by about a quarter or a half inch, so that way none of the weight is on the casters and the axle for shipping longer distances and stuff. So I made this out of a 2 by 8 by 10, and so I only got one block here, but I have two of them that came out of that one board. The dimensions are 16 across exactly, so for the top and bottom 16, and then top to bottom is 10 inches. And keep in mind that the thickness of your board, you have to account for it too. So the top board and the bottom board are 16 exactly, and these center supports are 7 each. For this particular block, I did not cut down the center support, but I did on the other one, and if I were to make them again, I would definitely allow myself some space here in case I needed to secure straps around it, or maybe put another board to stabilize it front to back. But in my case, it ended up working out. But that's just one design change I would make for this particular block, but that's how it is on the other one. When it originally started off, I did it as just a full square top, and the support was going this way in the middle. And then I realized that on the Yoder, there's a D-ring that's right under the edge, those side edges to be used as a tie down. And I wanted to be able to access those D-rings in order to, exert some downward force onto these blocks and keep it centered once it was on the trailer. So I had to modify the block, and it ended up like this. So obviously I turned that middle support 90 degrees, and now it's running lengthwise along with the bottom and top boards. And I had to make some cuts here, so I didn't get too sophisticated with it, but this is if 8 inches is your center, then this opening is 4 inches, and it is 2.5 inches wide. So 2.5 inches wide, 2 1/4. Keep in mind the thickness of the 2 by 8 is actually really only 1.5 inches, right? It's only 1.5 inches thick, so that gives another half inch or so past that for support. I don't think I actually measured how I was gonna make these cuts, because I ended up making it a little bit deeper too. But if you wanna get precise with it, exactly 3 inches or so is where the apex or turning point of this angle is on both sides. 3.5, 3. The most important thing is to have it centered to where that D-ring is going to be, and to give yourself enough relief. So the whole reason I use this block, at least one so wide, is so that it had a large footprint to distribute all of that weight, because it is 450 pounds. This is definitely overkill, but I wanted the peace of mind that it provided. And plus, I didn't want it, hanging onto the edge. I wanted it to be properly centered once it was running across the board. Now, it's not actually 8 inches, it's 7 1/4, so keep that in mind when you're trying to find where your center is, right? You want the edge of the Yoder to fall right on that, or close to that middle point, and then you also want to have enough relief for the D-ring. So for my D-ring, it's about 2 inches deep, and I ended up actually pushing that back a little bit more from where it was originally, because I didn't get my calculation for center right. But anyhow, I think this is plenty of material, especially with the durability of this wood, to take on the weight of that with no problem. As far as the carpet goes, you can use like a marine grade carpet, which won't scratch, or any type of low nap polyester. This is just like a real thin one off the shelf or off the roll at Home Depot. Make sure that if you're gonna staple or nail it, that you don't put any nails or staples along that top edge. That's gonna be in contact or potentially in contact with the paint surface. I got all mine underneath or inside or on the sides. On my other one, I do have one staple that was right here, but it was on the front. So fortunately, that's not a part that I slid across it. But anyhow, pretty simple, very durable, and I highly recommend, especially if you're going to be traveling over distance, to use a block of some sort like this, because those D-rings are going to be kind of important for you to be able to secure that depending on how you intend to ship it. I've seen other people that take those D-ring tie downs off the Yoder and then they just have it sitting on here, and then they just have cross straps on the Yoder applying pressure down to keep it. I guess it really just depends the type of trailer that you're shipping it in or how long you're going for. But that's it. What's up, everyone? Today I'm going to show you the setup that I used to tow a Yoder 640S on a competition cart with my 2015 SR5 stock 4Runner. The only thing that isn't stock is that it has 20-inch limited rims and wheels, but other than that, the whole thing's stock. And I towed it on a 5x9 Uhaul trailer. I went over the top, but that's okay. I'm gonna break it down for you. So if you purchased your Yoder new, or if you did not, when Yoder ships these, they ship them fully assembled on a custom skid. And that custom skid, they add blocks right below the caster arms, not to lift the Yoder up, but just to prevent any downward force being applied to that caster and the axle within it. So my goal was to try to find a way to emulate that for my 350-mile trip from Southern California to Phoenix, Arizona. So I went online and I looked for a few things, and I came across someone who made some supports for their Yoder. Now, this looks very complex because I framed it in. I might do a separate video just real quick to show you what the support looks like. But my primary goal was just to take the weight again off of that caster in its entirety. So quick dimensions on this: it's 16 inches across and exactly 10 inches top to bottom. And what that did is it lifted the Yoder itself just about like 1/4 to 1/2 inch off of the floor here. So that way all of the weight was entirely off of the casters. So once I got the Yoder in place and then slid the supports underneath. Oh, by the way, one more dimension: 16 across, 10 top to bottom, and this is a 2x8, so in reality it's 7 1/4 inches long. But I wanted something that had a large footprint on the bottom, because I knew that this ribbed floor of the U-Haul, right, going to have a little bit more traction and distribute that weight as much as we can. You don't want to make it any larger than 16 inches for a couple reasons. First and foremost, it's pretty tight. When I built this thing, I didn't have the Yoder in front of me. I was doing it off very minimal dimensions, but you can see there's a pretty snug fit here. One thing that I didn't anticipate is that the wheels that spin both have a lock, except that lock is on the same exact side. So on this side, it's outside the Yoder, but on this side, it would be inside, if that makes sense. So I had to make sure I spun the wheel around in order for this thing to fit. On the back side, it's an even tighter fit. I didn't anticipate the wideness of the arm along with the bolt, but as you can see, there's like millimeters left of space. So this 16-inch dimension is the maximum that you can go in order for this to work. So once I got the Yoder up onto the supports, the next thing is that I wanted to be able to tie them together, because if you lift the unit up off the floor, it's very, very top heavy. And even though we have a nice wide base, it still had a tiny bit, a little wobble And I knew that if you're on the road, that's going to be a little bit more pronounced. So if your only option is to build the supports and you're not going to do the additional framing like I did, then you want to make sure that you tie them together, maybe with like a board on the inside on each side here, and then run that up to the front underneath to the other support, and that'll tie the unit together. For me, since I was going to do this additional framing, I used one big center support that runs from the front to the back, and actually that did quite a bit to help stabilize it. But then I took it another couple of steps. I used 2x6s for the framing, which is probably overkill. You can get by with 2x4s, but I figured for the $2 per board, it's not that big a deal. You have to cut a little bit of relief in there, but that's no issue if you got like a circular saw or a hacksaw. For the framing, okay, so for the supports, you're gonna need 1 2x8x10, and that'll be enough to make 2 supports. For the framing, you're gonna need 3 2x6x10 or 2x4x10. When I was at the store, I had them cut the 2x6x10s for this framing in half, so that way I could transport them a little easier because I had a smaller vehicle. But at any rate, after I made sure it was nice and centered on the support, then I went ahead and cut to fit in between the rails here, which is about 59 inches, this cross brace, and I screwed that into the support on both sides. In my case, I went ahead right after that and took care of the center brace connection from the front to the back, because I wanted to make sure that the distance was exactly what it needed to be. And then after I connected that, I came and attached another approximately 59-inch board for the rear. Same thing, just 2 screws into the front of the support. And then to make sure that was nice and stable, I added another, this is a little, I think it's right around 4 feet, another run of board to each side. And this thing is solid as heck. It's not going anywhere. There is a little bit of a hill climb outside the Coachella Valley to get to the high desert, and I didn't really want the D-ring alone to be taking the weight of the entire unit on the front, right? If you're climbing uphill, all of the weight would be put on this front D-ring, and you can see there's just a couple little bolts in there, and you don't want to bend sheet metal and stuff. I don't know how strong all of this stuff is. I mean, this thing's a tank, but out of an abundance of caution, I went overboard, as you can see. So I'll show you the strapping, but I'm gonna kind of do it in reverse here. So I have this strap that goes and wraps around the back of it, and that's not super tight. I actually put it on after all the other straps, obviously, because it's on the outside. And the whole point of that was just to support the unit as it was being carried uphill, not necessarily to secure it in any other way than that, right? I'm still utilizing the tie downs as well as a couple crossover straps to actually add compression to those supports, because there's otherwise no way that it's attached to the supports. It's just sitting on there. So this strap was just solely to take up the weight going uphill. Take this sucker off right now. Okay. That's my next strap. So this strap was just to keep the moving blanket on. I had another one wrapped around it that just kept the moving blanket on. And then I got some ghetto duct tape to keep the moving blanket on top of the Yoder itself. But otherwise it peels off. So you can kind of get a sneak peek here about what's going on with the strapping. The first thing that I did after I got it on the supports and then got it framed in is that I came and I secured it to the front D-ring here, to obviously the two corners of the front of the trailer. And I did my best to get that D-ring nice and straight when I initially started off, but I kind of tweaked the thing here or there along the way and just tightening them, so that's why it's pulled just a little bit taut. But these things are still, after 350 miles, super taut. So I did the front first and applied some, not too much tension, but did tension. Then I came to the rear and applied tension to these. Again, not too much tension initially. And fortunately, this trailer is not too wide for a single person to be able to tension both those ratchets at the same time, so that way you can do it evenly. And like in this case, you can see this D-ring is perfectly straight, which was the goal right out the gate. After I got that in, I came and added a block of wood with just like a little towel here to prevent any like paint rubbing off. And that was solely to just keep the entire unit as one. So if it did happen to slide back, you know, having everything attached to itself, it would all move as one. But this thing didn't even flinch. After I got those secured, I went ahead and added 2 cross straps from the center of the trailer here over the top of the Yoder, and then another one from the center to the opposite side. And that's applying the downward force onto the supports, because again, it's just sitting on there. It's not secured like when they shipped it. They had it banded to the skid and there was one cohesive unit. But this setup is probably even better than what they shipped it on, because again, I went through some bumps, some rough roads, and the hill climb, and this thing did not even budge. So I think I'm gonna follow up this video with a short one that just goes over how I built these supports, because it's a little tricky. I initially built it as a rectangular frame with supports on the outside and then one in the middle. But then I realized I needed access to the D-rings. So I had to take the middle support out. I ended up cutting this one in like half, or down to 4 inches, and putting it under the middle of the back of the support, and that gave me access to the D-ring while still providing, you know, a little bit of additional weight relief for just having if it was just the 2 on the side, plus it keeps it square. I used a polyester carpet on the top of it, and I just kind of nailed that down, not nailed it down, but stapled it down. Actually, see, I have a staple up there. Thankfully, it didn't slide across that, but that's the only spot that I accidentally stapled up top. Otherwise, everything's wrapped around and underneath. You use a marine grade carpet, which is won't rub either, but I didn't have any at my Home Depot, so I just used like cheap thin carpet. Make sure it's on the thinner side. I guess it doesn't really matter. I think that's it. Yeah, I mean, I got this sucker here. I towed it in S4 on the 4Runner the whole time when I was coming up the hill outside Coachella. I set the cruise control to 60 and it didn't struggle at all. I mean, it just took it like a champ. Right from the bottom to the top, did not struggle. I didn't notice any significant decrease in towing capacity, in gas mileage, which this thing I think is only about 35% of the 4Runner's rated towing. It's 1,200 or 1,300 for the trailer, plus another, call it 425 for the Yoder, so that's about 1,750. So that's well within the capabilities of the 4Runner. Super happy with the way it performed, and most definitely the peace of mind that this particular setup provided.